If I remember correctly, we have one question from a online participant of this panel discussion who has a question for you, Mr. Farkas, with regard to the safety of such infrastructure that has been presented, especially these wooden dams, whether there is a danger inherent in case of a flood water and following a breakdown. We had such a case some months ago during a torrential rain, a storm. Such infrastructure broke down in Rudno nad Hronom, causing some damage to the village, even loss of life. I myself am interested about your comments with this regard.
Yes, thank you for the question. So there is a threat if these dams are built in the wrong way. But what we propagate is that these should be very small retention measures. So these dams shouldn't be higher than half a meter. So the amount of water they retain is not that much. And there's always a space for water to flow through. So yes, they need to be maintained and inspected regularly. And of course, if this is not happening, there is a safety issue. But if they are, it should be fine. And actually, this is with these dams, we are somewhere in the gray zone in Hungary. So right now, it's not very clear if these should be going through the same permitting procedure as if you would be building, let's say, a huge reservoir. So normally, you would have to apply for a water rights permit. In this case, right now, it is not clear whether we should or not. So it's especially important to build these dams really safe and out of strong material and to inspect them regularly.
Thank you. So essentially, maintenance is probably the key and oversight. Yes. Are there any questions for the auditorium? If that's not the case, in the moment, I have maybe two questions for our panelists. Questions that I am asking myself repeatedly. In this country, we have had a conference of silviculturalists some, I think, 70 years ago in the late 50s in Sliač, in an international conference where the foresters from the former Czechoslovakia and also Europe, whole Europe, mainly from also Hungary, Poland, Switzerland and other countries, planned for a transformation of forests towards close to nature forestry. Interestingly, they planned the transformation for some 70 years. So it's now where this project would have to be kind of implemented, and we would have the majority of forests transformed to probably close to nature forests. For various reasons, this project didn't succeed, and still we are almost 30 years after the first conference on the impact of forests, of climate change impact on forests in what is now Slovakia, in this country. And still we are, speaking mostly of relatively small scale initiatives, projects. Even if I take the measure from from Professor Radu Malu from Romania, that short term for us is 30 years. It's still already 30 years. So my question is, why this is not going faster, this transformation? Why it is so? I myself have like maybe two or three like partial answers. One is really the long production cycle in forestry, which is in Europe 100 years or more. Then, of course, maybe we haven't addressed other issues. It's education. Is the education system in forestry doing enough, starting from universities like ours, for example? And then what I think, and I make a reference to another conference which was like seemingly handled a different topic. It was like poverty. It was organized by the Catholic Church, but it boiled down like in the wrap up of the conference that it is a question of lifestyle. Isn't it also the lifestyle of us foresters that maybe leads us to think that we have the holistic knowledge of everything? But there is a difference, for example, now between medical doctors and foresters. I think sometimes I see this difference in what they say, the medical doctors. When they manage to heal someone, they say, okay, I made just a small contribution, but this was the miracle of nature. While we foresters very often tend to say, okay, we can do it. And unfortunately, sometimes the reality shows us that the real life, the complexities of climate change are much more complex, and maybe a change of attitude is also necessary. It's not only the question of money, because sometimes you cannot pay for the lifestyle that people grow to like. So, okay, I brought my skin on the market, so, and I solicitate your comments on what I have said, please.
Yeah, maybe me, because I'm closest to you. Yes, I totally agree that it is a complex situation which requires a shift of thinking. In the past, I think everybody liked simple solutions. It was very simple to manage just a homogeneous forest, very simple to calculate everything, very simple to plan everything. And now we have a shift in society. We already start to get used to more complex things. For example, in Bulgaria, we used to collect all the dead wood. We had a lot of rural population living close to the forest, which collected this wood. Now we don't have any more this population, and now it's much more easy to introduce these kind of new measures. We call them new, but they are rather old. And also education. My professor started speaking to us about this really more complex system for close to nature management when I was student. This was kind of 20 years ago. And now my colleagues start to go into the system like top managers. So it requires kind of 20 years until my colleagues, which were educated together with me, go to really implement what they have learned. And my students will be probably 10 or 20 years from now in the system. So it takes time. Yeah.
For them, the new normal, probably. Mr. Jantošek, please, could you help us with the other microphones so that we do not have to circulate the only one? Thank you. Professor Šibik, could you maybe also give your comments on this wish? Thank you.
Thank you very much for this complex question. What I feel that silviculture, forest management in general, is interaction between man and forest. So it's not just a technical issue, but it is also the change of mind. And I presented some examples of the good practice. And what was at the beginning was the local forester, who have had the vision and felt that he has to do it in another way. At the same time, at our faculty, at our university, we are a lot of aiming towards close to nature silviculture. But at the same time, we see that just some part of the students are really accepting the information, and some part remains rather conventional. So it's the huge part of the story is the man mind.
Thank you so much. That really touches upon the issue of also including humanities, probably in the education at the forestry universities and faculties, so that we are not, so to speak, confined by the realm of the traditional forestry thinking that we are the masters maybe of nature and so on, because we work with nature, of course. But I would also like to, because I took the definition of the short-term period on forestry from Mr. Radu Malu, whether he could express his opinion also on this.
Yeah, thank you very much. You hear me. First of that, I think the close to nature management is understand different from the countries. I think it's not the same view from the all countries in this region and in Europe more than that. What is saying the close to nature? I'm a forester, so I can to think about the solution like close to nature can be selection cutting. If it's like that, okay, in this case, for example, in Romania, the biggest problem is the infrastructure. We don't have infrastructure to make a selection cutting, which in same close to nature management in some point of view from part of the specialist. On the other hand, I told you about the good practices which we have it in Romania in this moment. These good practices, it is in general applied, but we have our problems where this practice is not applied. Today, I want to have a good vibe and to talk just about the positive aspects. Where we apply these good practices, the forest, it's able to be natural and in the same time to respond of the need of the wood of the society in this moment. But we have our problems with now the forest is not just a state forest. We have majority of the forest which is private one. So here the aspects start to change. The society, the peoples want to change a little bit this system to try to create a close to nature management. But the people not understand that behind of that, we have to pay for that. Because close to nature management, in same, not always profit. In same, in general, okay, a balance between economic and social and ecologic aspects. And if we want to do that, we have to understand that the wood will be more expensive, for example, for anybody who want to buy wood. And we have to be very, very careful with this aspect because the market have need the wood not for money. I don't want to think like that. The market have need the wood because the wood is one of the only material which are able to substitute the plastic, for example. So we have to have the wood. It's important to have a harvesting, but more important is what we are doing with the wood over that. We don't have to burn it. We have to maintain it, to maintain the carbon in any systems which we have it in houses, in furniture and other aspects like that. So close to nature, if you look at the landscape approach, you can have close to nature not just with selection cutting. I'm present there a uniform shelter wood and group shelter wood system, which you have a landscape approach. You can to have a close to nature and the landscape approach system. If you are able to have in that landscape the all categories of ages of the trees, all categories of ages. That is not happened in the small area, a little bit bigger area at the plot level. Plot level is in Romania around of between 10, 15 hectares, let's say. You can have here 50 hectares with young forest. Over that I have with 10, 30, 40 years forest, and in another part with 120 years and another part 160 years. So if I have this landscape, I can say I have a close to nature approach in that area because I'm able to maintain the habitat for any type of species which have to live there in old trees, dead wood, and in the same time in young trees where another type of species have needed that type of habitats.
Thank you.
So we can imitate, we can recreate, let's say, a virgin forest specifics in the cultivated forest if we take into consideration the landscape approach and, of course, to be clear how much we want to harvest in that area according with the growings and other aspects which we have to be taken into consideration.
Thank
so we have to understand that this is not an effort.
Can you hear me?
Just
because
for
we are not now under time pressure. I want still to give the floor to Dr. Bruchanik to make his maybe final statement. And thank you, Professor Malu, for your comments on this. I take two important aspects, which is the landscape scale. You know, being in Romania, it always impresses me when I see the vertical zonation and the succession, you know, from the lowland forests to up to the upper forest boundary, which is very important, similar to the texture in flat terrains, this vertical succession, and other aspects that you have mentioned. But Dr. Bruchanik, please, a few words, few comments from you.
Tak ja som v podstate už vo svojej prezentácii zdôraznil, že postup zavádzania prírode blízko hospodárenia do praxe je vlastne dlhodobý proces. Keď tak vezmem v roku 2000, my sme vlastne len ešte na Slovensku tvorili preklad anglického Close to Nature Forestry, aby sme vlastne vytvorili nejaký slovenský ekvivalent, čomu sa budeme venovať. A dnes po 20 rokoch vlastne zistujeme, že prírode blízke hospodárenie je v podstate pojmom, ktorý sa dostal už aj do našej legislatívy. Myslím, že v tomto Slovensko hrá naozaj vedúcu úlohu alebo vedúcu rolu.
Thank you for pointing out this important fact, which really maybe we are often not aware enough, and it could be the source of maybe a pride also, maybe some satisfaction, but also a challenge for the future and the driver for future efforts to make it even more widespread and more popular. And what you have said before during the presentation, that in the long run it shows that these approaches are not only economically viable, but also lead to the formation of much more resilient stands, which it appears for certain would save and is already saving a huge amount of resources. I think you would agree with me, because I'm basically repeating what you have said. And this is basically a summary of our series of panel discussions. We have covered many topics, starting from the scientific evidence, where we concluded that perhaps the deciding majority of stakeholders already believes and is aware and acknowledges the evidence for climate change, not only of climate change, but its impact on forests. And then we covered also the topics, how this evidence is reflected in policies, either EU policies and financial schemes, including of financial schemes on the national levels, local level. We have maybe pointed out the importance of the mutual responsibility on the part of foresters to see that wood is a resource that needs to be processed with utmost care, and every bit of it really to ensure effective processing, so that the customer really gets the value when we already are managing sometimes a very difficult areas, slope areas prone to erosion and so on, in a careful way. Vice versa again, among the manufacturers, processing industry that processes wood, it's important that they also consider the satisfaction on the part of customers on the whole scale, starting with the management of forests up to the top of the processing chain in the manufacturing sector and the delivery of quality wood products to the customer. And then we have seen some good examples of good practices. I think that maybe we could find a common denominator that maybe it's really not in place to be overly critical of the speed of the transformation of forestry towards more close to nature approaches. Much has been done already, and maybe to strengthen our position and to push these ideas forward, it's necessary to also look back sometimes of what we have accomplished. Then financial schemes, very important for the forest owners, forest managers, to support, to renew the technological park, for example, machines which are very often already obsolete and very old. And compared to the agricultural sector, unfortunately, forestry sector is suffering in this financement of resources available for forest management. And last but not least, we have mentioned forestry education, maybe establishing the new normal, as you, Professor, have mentioned, that the expectation that our students would already be those for whom this would be the main venue of their approach towards forests. And let me wrap it up with a question of lifestyle. We must maybe, or we should consider also including larger maybe amounts of humanities included in forestry education, to be able to understand that we play a very important but role in the whole chain, but that we foresters need to be open to the expectations and considerations on the part of society, and approach these challenges with the right conception of humility as well, towards society, towards nature, towards ourselves, to unload ourselves from the burden that we can do everything. Probably we can't. So this is my final word for this wrap up of this last panel discussion. I thank you all, gentlemen, for your contribution in all panel discussions. Thank you to all audience and to those who participated in this beautiful, brilliant event online. Thank you so much. I enjoyed being with you.